welcome to the Bruce Channel. I am Bruce, and it has been an astonishing week. I don't even know where to begin. There have been 2 or 3 candidates, all with legitimate reasons to be number one, and I can't decide. So I used a hat, and that's okay. The one that came up is certainly appropriate. Last week, at my press time, I'd said that no one was sure where the hurricane was going to be on Sunday afternoon. It was expected maybe be off our coast. No one was certain, and indeed we did end up with about 12 consecutive days of rain ending Monday. Some of those days saw flooding right here in River City, High Point, but not enormous flooding. But no one could have predicted the once in a thousand years torrential rains that turned a good deal of South Carolina into Lake South Carolina. Strong high pressure to the north coalesced with a low in the Gulf, and that funneled the moisture from the hurricane, which was out at sea, straight into South Carolina. And it just rained and rained and rained and rained and rained. You've seen the pics. Dams broke. Columbia, the state capital, the danger was sudden. I mean, people are watching their football games on Sunday, and emergency personnel go door to door. People leave now, right now, pack. There's nothing, no time to grab anything. Get out now. And again, you've seen the pictures. I've never seen anything. Yeah, we have seen streets underwater. Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, and that was 10 years ago. But the hurricane hit, not just some outer bands being driven in. This was nonstop rain. They are estimating some of the places, right there in the heart of the state, over 20 inches of rain fell. That's almost a year's worth. And that was in 24 hours. But some of these estimates are guesses because in some places the rain gauges were washed away by the floodwaters. So they're estimating. And again, this week, my press deadline, the trouble isn't over. That water from the middle has to go somewhere, and it is downstream toward the Atlantic. So now the low country, the areas that had lots of rain but escaped flooding, may now indeed yet become flooded, and so they are evacuating the low country. Really makes you think. And I was in South Carolina for, just several weeks ago, last month. I had to do some film work, and I drove on some of those very interstates that were flooded. And in some cases, they remain closed because the roads aren't even there anymore. And that could easily have been here. If the high and the low had shifted just a few miles, all of that might have come into North Carolina. So, makes you think. And not all the casualties were inland. The cargo ship El Faro sank. Almost no trace has been found. A little bit of scrap, and they did find the body of one crewman. And some of the former crewmen from that ship have said it was rusty, had holes, poorly maintained, but that is yet to be determined with any certainty. But what does appear certain, they lost power. The ship's captain was calm, called it in, but said they lost propulsion. And that's a nasty thing. If your engines are running, you can steer the ship. You can go right into the storm, but without propulsion, you just get buffeted about hither and yon. One good wave, wind gust, tips you over. I have said it before, none of us knows when it's our time. So doubtless the crew started that journey the same way they started all their previous ones, the same routines, the same perfunctory kiss on the cheek to a loved one. Well, maybe it's not always perfunctory, maybe it was a passionate kiss. I'm going to be away this week, but I expect to get home at the end the same way I always have. But all it takes is a drunk driver, falling space junk. You never know. So, as I've said before, gather ye rosebuds while you may. I'd also previously said on a show that when Speaker of the House John Boehner resigned, it would make for great theater, as the backroom discussions and the deal-making might create a real House of Cards. But, what's gone down has way surpassed the TV drama. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, he was number 2 man. He was Boehner's choice to succeed him, but, that made the hard-right members angry. They're the ones that wanted Boehner out. So they didn't see this as any improvement. And Mr. McCarthy didn't help himself. He said a statement that seems to be that Hillary Clinton's polling numbers consistently beat anyone the Republicans ran in these hypothetical polls. So then he said would seem to mean that the Benghazi Committee's raison d'etre was to tear down Hillary Clinton's reputation. Quoting, he said, "Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was unbeatable, right? But we put together a Benghazi special committee, a select committee. What are her numbers today? Her numbers are dropping. Why? Because she's untrustable." Untrustable? But no one would have known any of that. So it's true, her favorables are lower, except by saying that, he gave her a terrific soundbite to use in her own ads. What I thought was worse. Presumably the Speaker of the House ought to be a good speaker, but after Mr. Boehner announced his resignation, Kevin McCarthy gave a foreign policy address. Now, anybody who speaks in public a lot makes mistakes. I mean, I certainly do. But he made like a year's worth in a half-hour speech. Untrustable. And here he's talking about foreign policy. You ought to know what the names of countries are, no? Hungary. Anyway, all of that became moot. This was unseen. This came out of the blue. On Thursday morning, before the vote was to be held, Mr. McCarthy quit the race. So now it's postponed. There's a mess. The Tea Party Republicans, they're a minority in the Republican Party, but they want everything their way, period. Period. Never mind that they're a minority in the Republicans, and never mind that there are Democrats. I don't really. I was going to say I wondered why they don't just form their own party, and I know why, because then they'd have no power. But the only one anyone thinks might be able to get everybody together is Wisconsin's Paul Ryan. He ran, you may recall, in 2012 as the GOP's vice presidential candidate, and he's smart. He's chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, and as soon as Mr. McCarthy quit, Paul Ryan issued a statement saying, "I'm not running for that." A lot of people are calling it the worst job in Washington. And meanwhile, John Boehner has said that, well, despite having intended to leave at the end of the month, he'll stay on until someone's elected. I'm reminded of this.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
All right, so I'm not predicting this, but I do wonder if some of the more ranking and traditional Republicans in the House might not approach some of the Democrats to see if some kind of a deal can be made when the Speaker is voted upon. Everybody votes, not just the majority party. There's nothing that forbids Democrats from voting for, say, a middle ground Republican. If they forged an alliance, there might be some governance again. Anyway, here's what I don't understand. These are the hard conservatives known as the Freedom Caucus. They call themselves conservatives, but if they are, then conservatism has changed. Conservatives used to dress modestly, no loud ties, no hard, fiery speech. To be a conservative meant that you took a slower approach. You might say, well, now, I don't know about these hybrid cars, Say a dozen years ago, a conservative might have said, I don't know about these hybrid cars. They may be terrific, but before we just go off and say they're terrific, let's see how they hold up. Let's see if they're safe. Let's see if they're reliable. Now, a dozen years later, they're safe and they're reliable, and lots of people are now making hybrids because it turns out they're good. You couldn't blame a conservative person for saying, let's just see how it works out, Anyway, it meant looking at things and considering and not leaping without looking. I voted for Republicans. I've said that, but the ones I voted for didn't say, no change, never, no how, no way. It was Republicans who opened the door to what was called Red China. They've got more people in the world than anyone else. Republican Richard Nixon is the one who opened that up. It didn't make any sense pretending they weren't there. And the EPA was also created under President Nixon. He and the other Republicans in office at the time did not see it as a meddlesome evil. They understood history does move along, and stomping your feet and shouting, I don't want this, I want my traditional values. History moves along. All right, so just a couple of notes on the presidential race. The first of the Democratic debates will be this Tuesday on CNN. Right now there's only like 5 going to be there, so they don't have to worry about polls to get anyone. Okay, over the years, we have learned some things about debates and how the players prep. Usually they choose someone who's knowledgeable to play the other opponent or opponents. They might get several. And then that's hard work, because that other person has to really study the opponent and learn to think like them and anticipate what they're going to say and what charges they might make. It was said in the 2012 that I think it was John Kerry. I don't remember actually, but I read an account, and he was so good at punching and counterpunching, as indeed they anticipated Mitt Romney might do, that President Obama got pretty PO'd. Anyway, that's a difficult assignment to do. And then oftentimes they go off to some remote location. They call it debate camp. Never been to debate camp. I've been to band camp, but never to debate camp. Anyway, Senator Bernie Sanders, he is not doing that. He's got papers and reports, and he'll read and he'll study, and he'll know his stuff, but he's not going to camp. He's not practicing, and he's not learning any canned lines. I've said that because he's authentic, people have responded well, but you know what I like most about him? He has vowed to not run negative ads. What a concept. Negative ads pretty much have become de rigueur. We, the people, hate them. It does seem to work. Last time around, Newt Gingrich, every Republican had his turn leading the pack, but when Newt Gingrich was doing well, Mitt Romney, of course, deep pockets, destroyed him with negative ads. The thing is, Senator Sanders is polling pretty well, and if he does well in a debate, he might do even better. And if he doesn't run negative ads, would Mrs. Clinton's campaign dare? I mean, it's one thing if everybody's doing it, but if only one is, and we hate it, then what? Doesn't that have a negative outcome? One thing is certain. This is the most unusual presidential season I have ever seen. One last thought about the election, and not this election, any election. I've thought this for a long time. It is no secret that in this country we don't have great participation. Most countries with real elections, didn't Saddam Hussein once get 100% of the vote? But countries that have real election, most of them get about 70% participation of the eligible voters. Now some routinely get 80 or even more percent. In presidential years, the years when we get the best turnout, we typically vote at about 60%. So for decades I said I could fix that. And I could, except there's two little things in the Constitution: freedom of the press and freedom of speech. The thing that would have to be modified just a bit would be those two things. The exceptions, it would have to be forbidden under major penalty to publish or speak of polling results. Now, I'd not ban a campaign from conducting polls, and of course they could act on any information the way they saw fit, but imagine how it would be if nobody knew or expected. The candidates would each, as they always do anyway, proclaim that they're optimistic, but when the polls show a 10-point swing, lots of people don't vote. Lots of McCain supporters probably didn't vote in 2008 because it was pretty well predicted that it wasn't going to close. And I've long thought that, and it's probably not going to happen. Another thing I do is forbid the publication or announcement of the eastern states until everybody's done voting. If you're a voter in California and you wanted to vote for John McCain, why bother, when it's declared before your polls are closed? All right, there is a little bit of a bright ray, little bit, really little. It may not ever amount to much, but for the first time since 1936, Gallup, arguably the world's foremost polling organization, won't be participating in presidential polling. Why? They have said that even though the scientific modeling has become more refined, the plus and margins are increasing. The plus and minus margins are increasing. There's a larger margin of error. Why? Cell phones, landlines, cell phones, landlines. Older folks, they have cell phones, but they often have landlines. Younger people don't have landlines. It's really hard to reach people on their cell phone because it's not listed. And the results are then skewed. If you're getting more old people who may vote differently than young people. So Gallup is just saying, hey, we're out. We're not going to do it. Meanwhile, the other polling firms haven't pulled out, but they have said their polls should not be used as they have been, that is, by the networks, at least in the case of the Republicans, to determine who's on the big stage and who's not. The pollsters don't fully trust the process either. Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. Or wait, I can let others do it. Remember, you can write us at the Bruce Channel at yahoo.com, and you can see all our previous episodes at tinyurl.com/Bruce Channel or at our Facebook page. I want to show you something. There are gorgeous scenes to be found in winter and spring and summer. But if this doesn't make your heart go pity-pat, you're either dead or close to it. This and lots of other gorgeous, breathtaking images can be found at the Facebook page of Stillness Speaks, one word, stillnessspeaks.com. Wow. All right, some weeks ago, that's wrong. It was actually, I was first going to show you this a couple months ago, but it kept getting backburnered because of this and that and this and that, and now it's, well, all right, so it's a while. But I did allude to it once or twice. Close encounter with a yellow jacket of an unusual kind. So I was in the backyard, just walking toward the garden area. No real task in mind. It's got some rows, it's got some weeds too. Anyways, I'm approaching, just a couple of yards in front of me, this thing fell. Didn't fall like a rock. Fell a little heavier than a leaf, and it appeared to be larger than a locust tree leaf, so I went to see what it was. Well, it was not a leaf, but neither, you're guessing yellow jacket, sure, but it wasn't just a yellow jacket. It was a yellow jacket in an embrace, not a fond embrace either, but in an embrace face to face with, I still don't know what kind of green bug. Clearly, I could see the yellow jacket stinging the green bug in the abdomen, but the green bug, which resembled a small praying mantis, seemed to be well positioned, Mantis would have bitten the head off the wasp, so it looked like it might not end soon. I ran to get my camera, and when I got back, I took some shots, except there really wasn't much to see. The green bug was not the winner. So I have some questions. Do yellow jackets go after live prey? I thought, like bees, they sought flowers. And what is it that attracted my attention? I mean, them falling, yes, but the green bug didn't have obvious wings. I suppose it could have. So did their encounter begin in the air? And finally, if you recognize what the green bug is, would you let me know? Send your answers to any one of those questions to the Bruce Channel at yahoo.com. All right, finally, I recently held in my hands something sacred, genuinely sacred. I'd mentioned I'd gone to South Carolina last month, and it was to finish some post-production work on the movie I'd shot earlier in the spring. Well, director of photography Denton Atkinson had previously done some photography work in Normandy, specifically about D-Day. And at the time, they needed a still shot, and he looked the part, so they dug a hole at Omaha Beach, in the sand, at Omaha Beach. Omaha, of course, was the bloodiest and most fiercely fought of all the Normandy landings. You've probably seen it, but its horror was best captured in Saving Private Ryan. So they dug, and they put on a helmet and they got their shot, but digging 70 some years later, 70-ish, an American shell and a German shell. They found more than one. If you look closely enough, you can even read the markings on the American one, 1944. Oh, and yeah, that is some of Omaha's sand. And I held these things, and I will tell you, it was quite a moment. All right. Well, I'm going to be away this week, so no show next Sunday, in all likelihood. But I do hope your upcoming week is the best one you've ever had, and then the one after that, I hope is even better.